More than 1,900 insect species are eaten by people around the world, and the United Nations estimates that roughly 2 billion people include them as a regular part of their diet. In Thailand alone, there are over 20,000 registered cricket farms. In Mexico, toasted grasshoppers have been a market staple for roughly 3,000 years. The aversion to eating insects is mostly a Western cultural quirk, and even that is starting to shift. But not every insect belongs on a plate. Some carry toxins that no amount of cooking will break down. Here is every insect you can eat, and the ones you definitely should not. Crickets. The house cricket has quietly become the most commercially farmed insect on Earth. Thailand's cricket industry traces back to the late 1990s, when researchers at Khon Kaen University developed scalable rearing techniques and shared them with local farmers across the northeastern Isan region. The idea caught on fast. Today, Thailand has over 20,000 registered cricket farms, operating more than 220,000 rearing pens, producing over 7,500 tons per year. Around 80% of those farmers are women. The taste is nutty and earthy, most often compared to toasted sunflower seeds. They are eaten roasted, deep-fried, seasoned with soy or chili, or ground into a fine powder. Cricket flour typically runs between 56 and 70% protein by weight, higher than beef or chicken gram for gram, and it ends up in protein bars, pasta, bread, and snack foods. The European Union authorized the house cricket as a novel food in early 2022, covering frozen, dried, and powdered forms. A year later, they approved partially defatted cricket powder as well. In the United States, cricket-based products already sit on grocery store shelves. One detail worth knowing before trying any edible insect. Crickets and shrimp share a protein called tropomyosin, and people who react to shellfish can have the same allergic response to crickets. The FDA issued a specific warning about this during the 2021 cicada emergence, and the cross-reactivity applies to virtually every edible insect, not just crickets. Crickets are raised in controlled rearing pens by the tens of thousands, but the next edible insect is still harvested the way it has been for millennia, by hand, in open fields. Chapulines. These small grasshoppers are a staple of Oaxacan cuisine in southern Mexico, and their history stretches back roughly 3,000 years to the Zapotec and Mixtec peoples. They are not an exotic curiosity in Oaxaca. They are everyday food, sold in markets by the kilo, and eaten as casually as peanuts or chips. The grasshoppers are gathered during the rainy season from alfalfa and cornfields, cleaned, then boiled and toasted on a clay comal, with garlic, lime juice, chili, and salt. Sometimes they are finished with sal de gusano, a seasoning made from ground toasted agave worms, dried chili, and Oaxacan sea salt. The finished chapulines get tossed into tacos, folded into tlayudas, stirred into guacamole, or eaten straight from the bag as a snack. The flavor is tangy, slightly yeasty, and nutty. People trying them for the first time often compare them to salt and vinegar chips, but a bit more substantial, with a faint roasted quality underneath. The lime and chili do a lot of the heavy lifting, which is part of why chapulines work so well as a first insect for anyone who has never tried one before. In recent years, they have started showing up on restaurant menus in the United States and Europe, often as a garnish or taco filling. But in Oaxaca, they have never left. They have simply always been part of the food. Chapulines have been a normal part of Mexican cooking for thousands of years, without anyone needing government approval. The next insect on this list had a very different path to the plate: mealworms. On May 3, 2021, the yellow mealworm became the first insect officially approved as a novel food in the European Union. The decision followed a risk assessment by the European Food Safety Authority, and the applicant was a French company called Micronutris. What people eat is the larva, not the adult beetle. The adult yellow mealworm beetle is hard-shelled, foul-smelling, and not something anyone wants near their kitchen. The larvae, on the other hand, are small, golden brown, and easy to farm in large numbers on simple diets of grain and wheat bran. Roasted mealworms taste nutty, earthy, and faintly wheat-like. The texture when dried is crunchy in a way that feels closer to a toasted grain than a living creature. Mealworm flour, typically around 60% protein, gets blended into bread, pasta, cookies, and protein bars across European grocery stores. The idea is that someone eating a mealworm flour cookie would never know the difference unless they were told. The sustainability numbers are part of why European regulators moved forward. A widely cited 2010 study out of Wageningen University in the Netherlands found that mealworms produced less than 1% of the greenhouse gas emissions of cattle for the same amount of protein. They also need a fraction of the land and water. Whether those numbers alone are enough to change Western eating habits is still an open question, but the regulatory door is now open. Mealworms needed European regulators to sign off before they could be sold on store shelves. The next insect never waited for permission from anyone. Silkworm pupae. In South Korea, they are called byeondegi, and they are one of the country's most recognizable street foods. Vendors boil or steam them in large pots along busy sidewalks and serve them in paper cups with a toothpick, the same way you might buy roasted chestnuts from a cart in New York or London. The pupae are a byproduct of the silk industry. After the silk thread is unwound from the cocoon, the pupa left inside has traditionally been eaten rather than thrown away. The practice became widespread during and after the Korean War, when protein was scarce and the silk industry offered an abundant, cheap source of it. The smell hits first. It is strong and distinctive, a blend of nutty, shrimp-like, and faintly corn-like aromas that fills an entire street corner. The taste is milder than the smell suggests, often described as earthy and savory with a hint of sweetness. The texture is what catches newcomers off guard. The outer shell is firm and slightly chewy, and when you bite down, the pupa pops, releasing a soft, paste-like interior that takes some getting used to. Byeondegi are sold in cans at Korean grocery stores around the world, made into soups, and served as a common drinking snack alongside soju or beer. In China and Thailand, silkworm pupae are prepared in similar ways, typically stir-fried with garlic, chili, and a splash of soy sauce. Silkworm pupae are a byproduct of one of the oldest industries on Earth, but the next grub has no industry behind it at all. It comes straight from the Australian desert, dug out of the ground by hand. Witchetty grubs. These large, pale larvae are the caterpillars of the cossid moth, and they grow inside the roots of the witchetty bush in Australia's central desert. Aboriginal peoples have eaten them as bush tucker for thousands of years, using digging sticks to pull them carefully from the root systems beneath the sandy red soil. Eaten raw, a witchetty grub tastes like almonds, with a soft, almost liquid center. Cooked over hot coals, the skin turns golden and crispy, while the inside becomes rich and creamy, closer in texture to scrambled eggs. Some people compare the cooked flavor to chicken or prawns with a nutty finish. Either way, they are one of the most protein-dense foods available in the desert. The grubs carry cultural significance well beyond nutrition. They appear in Aboriginal Dreamtime stories, and the knowledge of finding them, reading the right bush, understanding the soil, extracting the grub without damaging it, is passed down through generations. Outside of Australia, witchetty grubs are nearly impossible to find. They are not farmed commercially and depend on specific host plants in specific environments. For most of the world, this is an insect you will only ever taste if you travel to Central Australia and find someone willing to show you where to dig. Witchetty grubs are one of the gentlest introductions to eating insects. Mild, soft, and easy to like. The next creature on this list is the opposite. Tarantulas. In the Cambodian town of Skuon, roughly 75 kilometers north of Phnom Penh, deep-fried tarantulas are sold from trays at the roadside. The town has earned the nickname Spiderville, and the spiders, called a ping in Khmer, are as common a street snack there as a bag of popcorn would be anywhere else. The tradition is widely traced to the famine years of the Khmer Rouge regime in the 1970s, when food was so desperately scarce that people began foraging anything they could find in the surrounding forests and fields. Tarantulas turned out to be plentiful, surprisingly high in protein, and genuinely good when cooked right. The preparation is simple. The spiders are tossed in salt, sugar, garlic, and sometimes MSG, then dropped into hot oil until the legs go completely crispy. The legs are the easy part, crunchy and light with a mild, savory flavor, almost like a very thin French fry. The body is where opinions split. The abdomen contains a soft, paste-like interior that some describe as nutty and rich, and others choose to leave behind. The overall taste is most often compared to soft-shell crab. The spiders used are Thai zebra tarantulas, and while some are now raised on small farms, many are still caught in the wild. Over-harvesting and deforestation have put pressure on wild populations, and conservationists have raised concerns about long-term sustainability. A single fried tarantula at the Skuon market has traditionally sold for just a few cents, though prices have risen in recent years as the snack has gained international attention. If you are finding this interesting, consider subscribing. I cover food and culinary curiosities like this every week. Now, tarantulas are technically arachnids, not insects, but they show up on every edible bug list for a reason. And the next creature on this list is another arachnid, one that comes with a venomous stinger: scorpions. In parts of China and across Thailand, scorpions on skewers are a familiar street food. Vendors thread them onto thin wooden sticks and deep fry them until completely crisp, selling them alongside fried starfish and seahorses to a mix of tourists and locals who have been eating them for years. The question everyone asks is whether they are safe, given the stinger. The answer is yes, with one important condition. Scorpion venom is protein-based, which means cooking heat denatures it the same way heat denatures an egg white. A thoroughly fried scorpion will not sting your mouth. The venom was never designed to work through digestion anyway. It works through injection. That said, experienced vendors typically remove the stinger entirely before serving, and an undercooked scorpion is a different situation altogether. The flavor is fairly subtle. It is mildly nutty, slightly savory, and more about texture than taste. A well-fried scorpion is crunchy, the way a potato chip is crunchy. The shell shatters on contact, and there is very little inside, which makes eating one feel closer to having a garnish than a meal. At the Wangfujing night market in Beijing, scorpion skewers are sold as much for the experience as for the food itself. Cooking is what makes scorpions safe to eat. And the same basic principle applies to the next insect, one that comes with thousands of years of religious endorsement. Locusts. These are the only insects explicitly named as permitted food in the Torah. The Book of Leviticus lists certain species of locust, cricket, and grasshopper as ritually clean, and Jewish communities have eaten them for centuries. In Islam, locusts are considered halal. Christian scripture records that John the Baptist lived on locusts and wild honey in the Judean wilderness. Few foods on earth carry that kind of cross-faith endorsement. Yemenite and Moroccan Jewish communities historically collected locusts during swarms, roasted them with salt, and dried them as provisions. Across sub-Saharan Africa, locust swarms have long been treated less like a disaster and more like an unexpected harvest. People gather them in enormous numbers, remove the wings and legs, and boil or fry them for eating or storing. The taste is mild, lightly nutty, and takes on whatever seasoning is added. Fried, the texture is crunchy and slightly hollow, similar to a puffed rice snack. The European Union authorized the migratory locust as a novel food in November 2021, making it the second insect species to receive official EU approval after the mealworm. An Israeli company called Hargol Food Tech now farms locusts at a commercial scale and markets them under the brand name Biblical Protein. Locusts may be the most culturally endorsed edible insect in human history. They span continents, religions, and thousands of years. But not everything that crawls or flies belongs on a plate. And this is where the list changes direction, because some insects carry chemicals in their bodies that no amount of frying, roasting, or processing will break down. Monarch butterflies. They are beautiful, iconic, and genuinely toxic. Monarch caterpillars feed exclusively on milkweed, a plant loaded with cardiac glycosides called cardinalides, and the caterpillars concentrate those chemicals in their own tissue as they grow. The toxins survive metamorphosis intact, so the adult butterfly is just as toxic as the caterpillar was. In classic experiments, birds that ate a single monarch vomited shortly after. In large enough doses, cardinalides disrupt the heart's ability to regulate its own rhythm. The bright orange and black coloring is not decoration. It is a warning label written in wing scales. Fireflies. The soft glow drifting across a summer lawn comes from a chemical reaction that also produces defensive compounds called lucibuphagens. These toxins are structurally related to the poisons found in certain toads, and they are potent enough to kill small animals outright. Reptile owners have lost bearded dragons and chameleons after the animal ate a single firefly from a backyard. The glow is beautiful, but it doubles as a "do not eat" signal that most predators learn to respect. Blister beetles. These beetles produce a substance called cantharidin, which is the compound behind what used to be marketed as Spanish fly. The reputation sounds almost harmless, but cantharidin is a severe vesicant, meaning it blisters and destroys living tissue on contact. Eating a blister beetle can cause serious damage to the mouth, throat, stomach lining, and kidneys. Horses have died after eating hay that was accidentally contaminated with crushed blister beetles during bailing. There is no safe preparation method, and that points to a useful general rule. If an insect displays vivid reds, oranges, or yellows, especially paired with black, treat it as a warning. In biology, those patterns are called aposematic coloring, and they almost always mean the animal is toxic, venomous, or foul-tasting. It is the insect world's version of a skull and crossbones, and evolution has made it remarkably reliable. The safest approach to eating insects is straightforward. Stick to species with a long cultural history of human consumption. Buy from farms or trusted vendors rather than foraging wild. Always cook them thoroughly. And if you have a shellfish allergy, treat every edible insect with real caution until you know how your body reacts. Humans have been eating insects for as long as there have been humans. Over 1,900 species, across every inhabited continent, prepared in ways as varied as the cultures that cook them. The only thing that has really changed is who is paying attention